Hello, and I think for this one we're gonna go back to return to form on the channel and return to some of the fundamentals, if you will, the insights that I try to draw back into and try to flesh out. Uh, and so I figured we'd follow along with the kind of ideas that I've been putting forth with, trying to take advantage, not really so much uh, taking advantage of the situation at hand when it comes to young men in particular. Uh, they are definitely falling through the kind of institutional cracks by purpose. I mean, I think there's an implicit kind of soft, uh, kind of a soft tone of, wanting to have most of us anhero ourselves, quite literally. And, I think there's kind of a demand for not just on the ground of trying to, pick each other up, I suppose, to some extent. I think part of the problem, at the same time, you have this culture of men should just express themselves and tell how they feel all the time. They've never been more restricted on their actual activities themselves and what it takes to actually be a man. Look at conversations like look at how popular those podcast episodes that Joe Rogan and Alex Jones have, right? Like, that was just, two white dudes just really shooting the shit, and, there's interesting conversations, but, this is conversations that you have at, like, bars with your friends, and that's pretty much what it was, and it's such a foreign concept now, I think, or even a taboo culturally, that, these episodes in particular are so much more popular than everything else that they do. And I think the explanation is just the fact that it's just men having fun. And how can we almost institutionally, give the space necessary to bring that out again, or to preserve it, whatever the case may be. And I think that's one of the big questions that might be worth looking at in the kind of politics we're trying to form, these kind of ways we're trying to share with each other in this experience of hypermodernity. And I think to go all the way back, if you will, there's a really good Aristotle quote that I plucked for this video in particular, and I'm going to quote it now. "Justice is the bond of men and states, and the administration of justice, which is the determination of what is just, is the principle of order in political society." And I think going back to ultimately just how we treat each other as, brothers in this kind of struggle, if you will, this kind of subtle, wanting of the elite class to kind of anhero the, middle class, whites to be frank. You kind of notice that, and this is one of the problems with, contemporary politics and how the kind of liberal hegemony falls apart, especially with the Democrats in particular. You see this, marginalized group here. White middle-aged men are, in most Western countries, 4 or 5 times more likely to commit suicide than everyone else by far. And, you would think that there would be an acknowledgement of that, if you will. But obviously it's not, because there's a lot of, dirty endeavors going on. And I think, going back to my sexual commodification video and the kind of alienation and this kind of displacement of the American family, no longer wanting to have children, especially in the urban settings, and the kind of, uh, and framing, if you want to get Heideggerian about it, of life itself. Spengler talked about kind of infanticide and concepts like that. He actually foreseen abortion before anyone else, I think, really, that I can think of. And so, I think kind of going on about that sexual commodification video, when it came to, there's kind of that shame and guilt complex, which is a powerful, concept. It's kind of like, well, you don't want to be some simp, you don't want to partake in something like that. That's a good start, and that's a good way of kind of trying to iron each other out for these kind of things, that these kind of circuses that probably take away what we could actually do with ourselves, and make better time of ourselves than just jerking off, and actually like putting discipline into something that could be aesthetic for yourself even. And I think the lack of institutional support for that, especially in these demographics, there's a lot to be explored here, I think. And so shame and guilt is just one leg of this, though, the kind of bro culture, if you will. You don't want to just be this kind of pushover, and women don't like that either. There's kind of an implicit there is that the kind of trope that women will never really tell you. They don't want to tell you directly what they truly want. They want you to figure it out for yourself. But she doesn't, in most cases, want a pushover either. She wants, kind of to be secured, and a pushover can't secure anything. So I think you kind of have to figure out these kind of things for yourself as you get older, and kind of unravel these these deeper concepts of intentionality that don't just come out in these kind of abstract ways of just like commands, because for the most part we don't even know who the commander really is anymore. And if you don't have that kind of establishment, or it's just so displaced, you just kind of get back down to these debates of like, well, who the hell are you to tell me what to do? But I think this is one of the problems that I've personally have had with the right, is this kind of leave them be, man's gonna do what a man's gonna do kind of attitude. And to some extent that is true. You shouldn't waste your time trying to save someone that doesn't want to be saved, if you will. But I think there is certainly, when I look back when I was younger, I wish I would have had more people who maybe would have pointed out to me in some kind of authority way to point out maybe I'm not going in the right direction about something. And I think we live in a culture under liberalism that kind of is antagonistic against that. This kind of or it's just looked down upon and seen as kind of meddling, and who are you to do that? But that's really how knowledge is kind of done, though, is it's just kind of passed down through these kind of situations that happened prior, and we're kind of warned about them by these stories, whether it's myth or these kind of rational arguments. And I think if we actually started to somewhat embrace more into looking out for each other, quite literally, uh, there's something that could be done there, and we don't have to be, outright just saying all. Or I think that's part of the reason why there's a charm to it is, you know, most of the kind of contributions and entertainment value that's kind of being put out in this kind of sphere. It's not like it's outright telling you all of these kind of commands or necessarily just these kind of, well, there is this kind of aspect of getting red pilled or kind of being woke, if you will, but you kind of find it yourself. You find it within what's like the memes or whatever the case may be, or the arguments or this video. You kind of derive the conclusion yourself. Some of it's satire, some of it's owning libs, that kind of old blood sports kind of trope, if you will, which kind of has like a kind of masculine energy to it. But yeah, I think in addition to that, it's kind of funny to think back on some of the old dialogues that kind of used to be happening around in this kind of sphere, and even though the labels have changed, there's kind of been a sort of intellectual history within this kind of like confined like subculture, if you will. And I remember when IQ nationalism and stuff like that was really popular, and one of the things that I was always kind of skeptical about when it came to these kind of concepts is high IQ doesn't really mean a very good society or a very cohesive one. When I think of most high IQ people, I think of speds, and not speds in like kind of just some disgusting like physical traits, and but I think there is quite a lot of psychology and a lot of works that go into how as we seem to continue to get more aware, if you will, of our surroundings, and our brains continue to expand to the point where some of these, there was a like a sports segment that I saw a while back when I was just like walking through my living room, and I kind of caught my eye, and it was about this guy, when he's like a college football player. He's like huge, man, and when he was like when his mom gave birth to him, he gave him like, his name's like Max. I think his name's Max. He's like a lineman for the Raiders or something like that, and she gave him an extra X in his name. His name's MAXX, because he was like a double-digit weighted like baby, and like the labor, like it almost could have fucking killed her probably. And it's kind of interesting to see how the cranium continues to expand. And I think this was a point that John David Ebert might have gave me about male deer, their antlers have evolved to the point where they put such pressure on the neck of these kind of alpha male deer that the antlers eventually just weigh too much, and it like weighs it down and kills them. And so when it comes to these kind of like high IQ society, kind of cream of the crop, when it comes to changes in reproductive rights, if you will, the selection process is getting more astute than perhaps when my great grandfather was like one of like 10 Mexican American children. that's not a thing now in my family. And so, um, this kind of high IQ awareness, though, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that, as you kind of go down that, trajectory of creativity and having this, awareness, that you actually find yourself more susceptible to mental illness, because you're kind of this fish that, I've kind of referenced this before on the channel, of the hyper-modern experience of being the fish inside of the fish tank that knows he's inside of the fish tank. Like he actually is able to, tap into these art forms and is able to figure out that he actually is in this kind of tanked existence. And, that's enough to make anyone socially anxious. And I think, in my own experiences with my life that I've shared on this channel, because I think, perspective and the political go hand in hand. I don't think that, these rational arguments, come first. So I think it's really important to kind of like, bear yourself out. This is why, political philosophers, a lot of them kind of read almost in this kind of confessional, because there's a truth to that. And, I think there's only really two things that can really happen. Is we're either going to be able to find a way to sort of redeem ourselves out of this kind of alienation, this social angst, this, what do we actually make of our kind of hyper excess of intelligence, if you will, and not not anheroing ourselves, if you will. And, I think, like I've said before, to actually go down this, road of trying to figure out what to make of nihilism and, the death of God, and now just it's kind of like petty abstract like arguments that we've really taken up to that like, shape our identity now. And, none of them actually concern how to treat your brother, what's the good life, as it were, because our religious institutions have just fallen by the wayside thanks to this, kind of power of technics and the internet. And, I think part of the mystique, if you will, and I've talked about this on a matter of life and death on the internet, one of my more popular videos on the channel, of kind of this kind of weird experience of like, I have always found content or art on the internet right exactly when it seemed I needed to, and this kind of algorithmic will, if you will. I don't put out any of my content, I kind of just put it out, and if people share it, they share it. I don't really expect a lot of people willing to put their neck out there and share some esoteric, crappy 480p video or something like that, saying these kind of radical things. But, I think people who want to find this kind of content do, and I think that that's something that is like true. It's just kind of an old truth of the internet that I think goes back to since I started using it all the way back when I was in primary school. But yeah, this video is kind of getting really off track. I haven't uploaded in a couple days. I've been kind of getting my ass kicked at work, but I appreciate everyone for watching. I'll see you guys for the next one.